we are back with a single crochet and turning row tutorial. Here is my chain length, and today I'm going to show you how to turn your row with the turning chain and then the single crochet row. So when turning a single crochet row, we are going to crochet into the second stitch from the hook, so not this stitch right here, through the top loop, or you could go through the top loop and the bottom and this bump, back bump, but it really depends on what the pattern calls for. If this bottom edge is going to be seamed, or if you're going to add fringe or maybe a border, you might want to leave just that bottom loop done, but we're just going to go through the top loop. So here we go through the top loop. See how there's two loops on the hook, and then we're going to yarn over, then pull through both of those loops. So that's one single crochet, and then we're going to go through, see, the top loop, yarn over, pull through, two loops, yarn over, pull through those loops. Now we have two, and you're going to continue that through the rest of your row. Pull through, yarn over, yarn over, pull through. Now what does it look like? See, like now we have this bottom row just with the single crochet. It doesn't really look much different when you go through both the bottom loops so much. And the stitch looks a little bit bigger. You can see the difference here and here. The stitch looks taller. That's because it's going through both of these loops, and this is going through just like this back loop. So it's also a preference on how you want your work to look like for a finished edge. So we're just going to go again through the top loop, yarn over, pull through, yarn, pull through the hoop, two, yarn over. So, and that's pretty simple going that way. You see I changed the crochet hook that I was using, and it makes a little bit of a difference of how the yarn pulls through. I think it's like a little smoother with the rounder head. We'll see what the other one looks like. And here's the one with the sharper edge. So here we go. And then when we get to the end of the row, I do something a little bit different than most people. We want to start learning how to crochet straight edges. That's not something I want to troubleshoot later. I know a lot of people end up troubleshooting that later because they want to know, why is my edges look all wonky? Why is my crochet like on an angle? And why do I have more stitches? How do I get rid of that extra bump at the end? So at the end of this row, and see we have this last chain here, the first chain we worked. I go through both the bottom loop and the top loop. So in essence, we're going to crochet through this stitch. So through the stitch, instead of going through the top loop and the back loop. This gets a little hard to do, but I found that my edges are much nicer this way. If I can see this. See how the stitches look like V's? We're going to go through under this V. Now it's going to look like that. So it starts off as not giving a hole at the end of the row or the beginning of the row. A lot of rows, when you move on to the next row, it'll say chain 1 for a single crochet row, chain 2 for like a half double or a double crochet row, chain 3 for a triple crochet. So now we're going to turn our work. So all we're doing is turning it horizontally. So I chained 1 and then I flip it over to the left side. So my yarn's still in the back, my chain's here, and then I'm going to crochet not into the stitch that I made here, but I'm going to crochet directly into the stitch next to it. Sometimes people call for the patterns where this single crochet acts as the next stitch crochet, but I find that that's what leads to the holes. So I fill that in with a stitch. And then you see how this little stitch is here. We'll come back to that and how I fill in my row that way. So now we're going through the tops of the stitches. Some people will go through like just one stitch. That's through the front loop or through the back loop. We're going to go through both loops. That's both through the stitch. Through both those loops, through the stitch. So you see how it's working out here? Let's switch hooks just to see if it makes any difference really. So not really. I can tell they're made of a little bit different metal though. So see how that's looking? Look at those V's. You can see the definite stitches there. We ended up recrocheting the chain, so we're gonna see what my gauge looks like at the end of this and measure it. So if you remembered, it was a 10 by 10 centimeter with 22 rows, 15 stitches across, or it will be a 4 by 4 inch square. So here is, and then we're coming to the end of this row. And now you can see how it's kind of wobbly here. Now you see this last stitch here. I'm going to do just something a little different. Instead of going through this stitch, I'm actually going to pick up this stitch that was on the end. It's kind of hard. I'm going to pick this stitch up and I'm going to go through the stitches, all those stitches. And that fills in that hole, like I said before. See how nice and nifty, neat that looks. We're going to chain 1. We're going to turn the work. Turn. So now, here we have this. We can count the stitches to see if we've made any extra stitches or lost any stitches. So you count the V's again. So 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. And we have 16 because that's our turning chain. So again, we're going to crochet into that very first stitch and then continue down the row. And it makes it. You see how tight I'm crocheting here. If I crochet a little bit looser, I probably won't have so many of those holes. Or if I went down a needle size, or hook size, if I went down a hook size, it would make a tighter fabric because the stitches would be smaller. And again, that depends on the project that you're working on, of how you want your stitches to look. I mean, you could definitely use a smaller hook for bigger yarn. It's just gonna look a little weird. But you really want to stick with what's called for in the pattern to get gauge, because that's how patterns are written. So now here we're at the end again. And I'm going to pick up that stitch and go through it. So see how I'm picking up that stitch and going through it. It's kind of tight there because it's a very tight stitch. And then crochet one. So now you can see my edges are nice and neat and straight, and it'll be very, very nice and neat. So we can measure this. So underneath this white paper, I actually have a quilting mat that's got a ruler on it, and you can see how big we've made this. So here we go. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 inches. That's pretty good. 4 by 4 inches. And one, how many rows do we have here? We have 1, 2, 3 rows, and you can count them by seeing how the bumps look. So this is the first row, and then you see this second row. These two rows look the same, the first and the third row, and the second row looks a little different. So you can 1, 2, 3. And if you look on the wrong side of the work, it's the right side from where we started, and then the wrong side of the work, it looks a little bit different. So you can see the back bumps of each of the stitches. So that's 1, 2, 3. So that's 3 rows. And so technically, if we go, it's saying if we did 22 rows, it should be another 4 inches. So 3, 1, 2, 3, 4 times 3. It's, I don't know. Maybe that's the knitting gauge. We'll continue on and seeing it. So now that's how you do a single crochet and a turning row for just a single crochet. And you see how nice and neat that looks. All right, next week we will learn, later this week we'll learn like what a slip stitch, a single stitch, half double, double crochet, and a treble crochet looks like, and what that looks like next to each other, and how those look on different fabrics. So I'll swatch up different fabrics in each of the swatches for those stitches. So thanks for joining.